Me and Minister Cece, we have a lot of those. And as we were having a conversation, she had no idea that this had already been spoken in to me to present as the next teaching from the Ruach HaKodesh. But as we began to talk about it, I began to get deeper into what Father Yahweh is trying to say to us in this word covenant. So that's what we're going to look at today. Covenant. Literal and spiritual. So let's start out. The first thing is we're going to start out always with the Hebrew, so we get a better understanding of what this word means. So as we get deeper into this study and deeper into this lesson, we will understand the workings of, prayerfully we will understand the workings of the language as it relates to what Father Yahweh expects of us and what we can expect from Him. So the word covenant in Hebrew, you've heard it many times. Berit. Everybody say berit. Berit. That's the word. It's H. Brown Drucker Briggs, Strong's Concordance 1285. And this word it's a berit. And it means a covenant. It means an alliance. It means a pledge, an ordinance, an agreement, a treaty. It can also mean a vow. This word is housed in the structural of those 7 structures that I've talked about before, where all of the Hebrew words in the language dwell. This particular structure deals with the thing of cutting and of making something, establishing something, and making a vow. Covenant. So it's related to the word bara. We see this word bara, H1262. We see this bara in the beginning of the Torah, Genesis, when you open it up. And it says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. In the beginning, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. So that word, bara, speaks to the establishment of a thing. Elohim bara. So the word to create is also within that house, within that structure. A barit, that means an establishing of a thing. So when he uses this word in the sense of cutting, that's why you will hear the word in the Hebrew in many scriptures when they say cut a covenant, and they cut a covenant. When even in the thought of when Peleg was born, the scripture says that when he was born, what happened? There was a dividing of the land. The lands were cut, and water was allowed to dwell within the places of the land masses. So Father Yahweh, even in that, cut a covenant with the earth in the pulling together and tearing apart of the peoples. Because what did he say? They're come together and they have become one. They have become mighty. Let us go and do what? Separate them. Let us go down and let's cut, separate them. So that was a covenant that the Father Yahweh placed in the earth when he divided the land masses. So now we've looked at that word, berit. Everywhere you see a word that has a beit, resh, and a tav, that's going to be the foundation. It's going to mean something about cutting, covenant, vow, promise, this word covenant from the literal standpoint, from the dictionary, just literal. Taking words in their usual or most basic sense without metaphor or allegory. Free from exaggeration or embellishment. So literal. This carpet is literally green. There's no embellishment. There's no exaggeration. Now, we didn't give you a shade of green. We just said it's green. So it gives you a thought in your mind to say, oh, I guess the carpet is green. That's literal. Characterized by a concern mainly with fact. Literal is factual. So when we look at a literal term, it is dealing with fact. It's not dealing with any thought of thesis, theology, thoughts of someone else giving an opinion. Literal, a literal meaning of a word is going to be with fact and without exaggeration. Exact, actual, verbatim. That's why we use the quotation marks. We know when we see a sentence and it's in quotation marks, that means that the person literally said it this way. We don't add to it and we don't take away. Literal. Now, let's go to the spiritual. The meaning of spiritual. Covenant or spiritual, of or relating to sacred matters, of or relating to the spirit, spiritual, or soul, as distinguished from the physical or natural. Bullet point, okay, I shouldn't have that bullet point here, but physical or natural. And then you have, when you have that physical or nature or natural from the distinguished from the physical, then you're understanding that this word is devoid of a literal physical body or something that it's dwelling in. It's spirit. So let's go to the purpose of a covenant. Now, this is the thing. You know, Father Yahweh is so awesome because man is just amazing. You know, the mind of man. Because Father Yahweh says, you know, a fool can't err. You take my Torah, you read it, you do it literally. I tell you to, on this particular day, me and Rabbi had a conversation about the new moon. And as we were discussing that about the new moon and about Pesach coming in, he said something that was just made so much sense. But man, in all of his wisdom and intellect, can take something so simple and tear it apart to where it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And he said, the Torah says that you are to do Pesach on the 14th day of the first new moon. Literal, period. And the man says, do I do it 14? Do I look at it the day before the vernal equinox? Do I do it before the full, where there's a full day, 12 hours a day and 12 hours a night? Do we do it before or do we do it after? Rabbi was like, it doesn't even matter. He said, do it on the 14th day. Boom. But man will take it, mix it all up, put himself in the middle of it, and then what happens? We have confusion. Nobody knows. And then everybody else who has sense and didn't put themselves in the middle of it will say, let's do it on the 14th day. So as Yahweh says, with this covenant, the purpose, the bottom line purpose of a covenant are these 4 things. 4 things, simple. If you have these 4 things, you are dealing with a covenant. That there is, a covenant is to be established. The words that is used here, that Father Yahweh uses in the Torah and all through the scriptures concerning covenant, when he talks about a brit, it is established between something, between 2 things, or between nations, or between people, or between elements. There's a covenant that is between the seashore and the sea. Because when Father Yah created it, he spoke to the water and said, don't go any further than this. Those are your boundaries. He spoke to the land, and the land understands that the sea will not pass any further than this. That's established. Covenant between and with things. The second point of the purpose of a covenant is to be a sign. Now this is the one that people have a problem with. The sign of a thing. The sign is important because the sign speaks to generations, to entities. When he gives an understanding, if you keep this covenant, then this is, if you do this, then your generations, or these entities, are going to benefit from it. Then we have the remembrance part. Now you cannot have a covenant without having that very important piece of remembering it. What's the sense in having a covenant if you don't remember it? That doesn't make good sense. And then, and being remembered, Father Yahweh uses 2 words. Guard, shamar, obey. Those are the 2 words that he uses. Guard and to obey. The 4th point in recognizing a covenant is to increase, to be increased. So that word to be increased, he deals with nations or people or a length of time. So when he speaks and says, if you I'm establishing this covenant with you, and this shall be the sign of the covenant, and I want you to remember this, and if you do those things, then I'm going to give you increase. But the important thing we got to remember about this increase is that it goes the other way. It could be decrease. If you don't remember, you don't have the sign, and you don't, it's not established. So it could go the other way, decrease. Now remember, it's the same thing. If you don't remember it, then you're not obeying, you're not guarding, therefore you are in breach of the covenant that is been established. So these are four things. So as I was getting this teaching, I said, man, Father Yahweh, we could really use this concept and understanding all through our life, through every aspect. I was trying to think of an aspect in our life where it would help. I couldn't think of one aspect in our life where it would not help. That something is established, that there's a sign, that it's remembered, and that there is increase that comes from that. So we're going to look at our first example of covenant. And that took me to Noah and the flood. Genesis 6:17 through 22. And I'm going to read that. And it says, "And see, I myself am bringing flood waters on the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life from under the heavens. All that is on the earth is to die. And I shall establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you, and all the living of all the flesh, 2 of each you are to bring into the ark, to keep them alive with you, a male and a female. Of the birds after their kind, and of the cattle after their kind, and the creeping creatures of the ground after their kind, 2 of each are to come to you to keep them alive. As for you, take all the food that is eaten and gather it to yourself, and it shall be food for you and for them." And Noah did according to all that Elohim commanded him, so he did. Now, as you can see up here, I have some words that are highlighted in colors. Because what I was looking for is the understanding that is this a covenant? Is this relative to those 4 things? Establishing, who it's to, between, the sign, what was the third one?
Remember.
To remember. Thank y'all. That's sad because I didn't remember. To remember. And then the last one being the element of
increase.
Increase. Something happening within it. So can we see all of the elements of that covenant within this is spoken word that Father God gave to Noah? Can we see it? So what's the establishment? Who is it being established with? Between? Yeah. My, who is Yahweh, and who? You. No. So that's in the green on it. And then we move on to the sign. What was the sign? The sign, you, your sons, your wife, or all? No. So he did, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons, your wives with you. And then so that he did it, we saw that he did it, he was obedient to it at the bottom. And then for what? To keep them alive, all flesh. So this was made to these groups of people. This was all flesh to keep them alive. Those who are going to be going into the ark, but all the other flesh, what was going to happen to them?
They're going to die.
They're going to die. So he made it real clear. This is who this is going to. The next covenant we're going to look at is who? Abraham. Abraham, in Genesis 15 and 18, it says, "On the same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham, saying, I have given this land to your seed from the river of Mitzrayim to the great river, the river Euphrates." So, who is that being established with? Y'all can go ahead and speak to me. Who's it being established with? The covenant. But who's the first one then?
Yahweh.
Yahweh is between 2 things and Abraham. Very good. So it also comes down to 17 and 2. "And I give my covenant between me and you, and shall greatly increase you." So there we go. We have me and you. There, that gives us the first portion, the first establishment that this could possibly be a covenant. And then we go on down and it talks about, "And I'm going to make you the father of many nations. And I shall establish my covenant between me and you and your seed." That's in 7. So that tells us, that gives us the understanding of what? That gives us the sign. This is going to be the sign. And this is what that sign is doing. And then he goes on down to remembering. And remembering is down there in fuchsia, down in 26 and 27. Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised. All of the men of the house were circumcised. So there we have. They went, they did exactly, they remembered what they were called to do, and they did it. And then we have the last one, that it tells us what the increase is going to be. So what is the increase in set 6 and 8? What's the increase? That he'll be exceedingly fruitful, and that Father will make nations out of them. Sovereign shall come from them. Your seed after you, the land of your sojourning, all the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession. That's the increase. So we see these 4 things. So we say, yep, that's agreed. That's the covenant. Then let's go to the next one. This is the final example. Jeremiah who? And 33, 20 through 26. And Father Yahweh said, thus say Yahweh, if you could break my covenant with the day and my covenant with the night. So now who is the covenant between? Day and night, but with Yahweh. Yahweh has established the covenant, and he said this covenant is between day and night. And then he goes on in 21 that my covenant could also be broken with who? David. He establishes David, my servant, so that he shall not have a son to reign upon his throne. And with who else? The Levites. Who else? The priests. And who else? My attendants. They are called the attendants because they do what? They keep the house of Israel in check concerning what? The Torah. These are my Levitical priests. So this covenant, there it is. It's with these people. And then he goes on to say, and we're going to jump down to 24. Have you not observed what these people have spoken, saying the 2 clans which Yahweh has chosen have been rejected? This is the point where we see that increase can turn to decrease. Remembering can turn to what? Not remembering. Being rejected because you don't remember. Therefore, there is no increase, but there's a decrease. So Father Yahweh gives us that information in 33:26, that I would also reject the descendants of Yaakov and David. So now we don't see an increase. There it is. Is this possibly a covenant? Yes. It's got the 4 elements of a brit, of a covenant. So now Father Yahweh looked at Father Yahweh saying, everywhere he said, I make this covenant, or I call forth this one or that one. And in Deuteronomy 4:26, Father Yahweh says, I shall call the heavens and the earth to witness against you on that day, that you soon completely perish from the land which you pass over the Jordan to possess. You do not prolong your days in it, but are completely destroyed. Here's that other side. And he's saying this because he's saying, if you do not guard or keep, remember my covenant, there's that remember. Establish the covenant. This covenant is established with who? The heavens and the earth. Yahweh has taken now his element to be the witness against or for the people of Israel. So he says, I call them to witness. So he establishes that. And then he goes on down and he says, you're not going to increase, but you are going to be completely destroyed. He said, why? Because you didn't do what? You didn't remember. Was this a covenant? Does this have the elements of that covenant? Absolutely. Then let's go on. Spiritual, what do you think this is? Do you think this is spiritual, or do you think it's literal? What do you think? You can say it out loud. There's no bad answer. Because we think differently. What do you think? Layla got her hand up. What do you think, Layla?
Spiritual.
Spiritual? Okay. Layla said it's spiritual. Anybody else want to throw your hat in the ring and say what it is? Literal? Literal? Okay. So, let's look at the dynamics of the spiritual and literal. Remember, we looked at the words, at the definitions of the two. Literal is a fact. Something that the undeniable, it's without opinion or embellishment. That's literal. Without opinion or embellishment. So where can we find that literal sense within this phrase? I shall call the heaven and the earth to witness against you on that day, that you soon completely perish from the land which you pass over the Jordan to possess. So if they completely were utterly destroyed and perished from the land, did that literally happen? Absolutely. You do not prolong your days in it, but are completely destroyed. So let's look at the spiritual aspect. Let's look at the spiritual aspect. I shall call the heavens and the earth to witness against you on that day, that you soon completely perish from the land which you pass over the Jordan to possess. You do not prolong your days in it, but are completely destroyed. Is there a spiritual aspect of that? Okay, what's the spiritual aspect of that? Say it again. It came from God.
Your generation?
The generation? Heaven and earth witnessing against? Yes, that's spiritual, exactly. So there's a possibility that could be spiritual and literal. Literal and spiritual, absolutely. Thank you, Layla. Now let's look at this day and night. Joshua 1 and 8. Do not let this book of the Torah depart from your mouth, but you shall do what? Meditate on it. When? Day and night. Here we go with that day and night again. Heaven and earth, day and night. Father Yahweh uses that a lot. Why does he use it? Because it belongs to him. He created them. You can use what you created. And he uses all of his elements to establish his words. He goes on to say, so that you guard to do according to all that is written in it, for then you shall, what? Make your way prosperous and act wisely. Does it sound like a breed? Can we see all four elements of the breed in this? Yeah. As short as it is, we can see the four elements of the breed. But is it spiritual or is it literal? Is it spiritual or is it literal? Do not let this book of the Torah depart from your mouth.
It's literal.
It's literal and spiritual.
But you shall meditate on it day and night.
That's a literal thing to do. Meditation.
So that you guard to do according to all that is written in it. That's literal. That's absolutely literal. And if you don't do it, it's a spiritual thing that's going to happen to you. For wisely. If you don't do it, what happens? It goes the other way. You don't have a prosperous way. Your way is not made prosperous. You don't act wisely. You act foolishly. Because you're doing the opposite. Is this a breach? Is this a breach? Yeah, definitely. It's what day and night, absolutely established. Remember, you have to do something, you have to remember it. You have to pass it down to your children. You have to keep it, you have to guard it. That's absolutely. Is there a sign? Yes. The sign is, if it departs from your mouth, you get cursed. And you might know that if you start living your life and nothing works right. That's probably the first clue. The second clue is if you do it and all your way is made prosperous, then you say, I did it. That was a literal. That's a breach. So now, let's look at when we talk about covenant, you cannot talk about covenant unless you talk about marriage. Marriage covenant. So let's look. Breach. Marriage, is there an establishment? Yes. Is there a sign? Is it to be remembered? You're supposed to. You're supposed to remember you married now. Because when people be messing up, I asked him today, did he know he was married? Well, she went in there and did, but did he know he was married? Because he's supposed to be remembering that. Yeah, I don't care what she did. He needs to remember. Absolutely. Okay, and then is there an increase? Absolutely. The increase comes, and I thought about this. The increase comes, and it's not always, about having children. Because you have couples that sometimes are married and stay married for life, and they can't bear children. But that don't mean that their life has not been increased due to the covenant that they had with this person. And people will tell you, they made my life better. They made my life happy. That was their increase. So I looked at my husband and I thought, man, I said, okay, so our marriage, we were established May 5th, 1979. Hallelujah.
Yes.
Establishment. There was a whole bunch of people there. I donned on this white gown that my mama had made. My husband had on his white tux, looking all handsome and stuff. And I wore right on down the aisle, right on to him. May 5th, 1979. And then there was a sign that occurred. We both pulled something out, got something from his best man and my matron or maid of honor, and it was a ring. And we took that ring, and he placed my ring on my finger, and I placed his ring on his finger. That was our sign. Everybody who sat in that hall saw that and experienced that and became a witness to the establishment of this berit, of this covenant. Now, is it to be remembered? Well, 42, 41 years later, we still hanging in there. I still married. We're still married. And then, was there an increase? Well, about March 14, 1980, came the increase. The first increase. And then May 6, 1988, another little increase came about. We grew from just he and I to a family. Increase. Is that a breach? Absolutely. That's a covenant. And this is one thing that, because we are not taught this, and the church can't really explain it properly, so people go into these covenants thinking, oh, I like him. He makes a lot of money. He cute, and she pretty, and she go, well, baby, after a few years, they don't look the same. People change. People get older. Hair start getting gray. Hair start falling out. Belly start expanding. I mean, all kind of stuff start happening. But if you are in an establishment and have a sign and it's remembered, and as the increase of years take place, you don't even pay attention to the changes. The changes don't matter. Why? Because it's a covenant. Now, is this spiritual or is it literal? Both. The literal aspect of it is that we walked down the aisle and people sat there as the witnesses. People come up to me still, after we were married years, people would come up and say, I was at your wedding. Now, what if I was doing something I had no business doing? What were they going to say? Oh, I was at your wedding.
He wasn't.
Who is that? Because that ain't the man that you walked down the aisle and got that ring from. Remembrance, that sign, all of those people were witnesses to that. Heaven and earth, we spoke out of our mouths and said, all that you say, I accept, I will do. I will love you in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, to honor and to obey, to submit to, for better or for worse, until we die. And those words are spoken. I love you until I die. That don't happen a lot of times. So people get the literal and the spiritual mixed up. They literally walk down the aisle and the spiritual just goes out the door in a few years. I can't do this no more. That's a bread. Also, this is sidebar. That's a Sabbath. The same thing that Father Yah calls for a marriage, that is spoken of concerning a marriage covenant, is also spoken of concerning the Sabbath. It's established. It's to be a sign, right? It's to be remembered and guarded, right? And with all of that, we get increase. He says, if you keep it, I'm going to give you double for you. You don't have to do nothing on that day. Because I'm going to give you enough for 3 days on the 6th day. So when you go into the 7th day, by the time you get to the 1st day, you still have an overflow from the 6th day. I don't know how that can be a bad thing. But there we go. A Brit that the church completely looks over. Completely. But they want to try to stay married. So now, we're going to look at another. The final covenant. To be established, to be a sign, to be remembered, to be increased. Spiritual or literal. Now this covenant, we look at with Yahweh. What's our covenant looking like with the Most High? Now if you're missing any one of these 4 things, I'm here to tell you, you're not in covenant with the Most High. He says, my ways are not like man's ways. As far as the heavens are from the earth, that's how far my ways are different. That's how different my ways are from your way. He gives us these 4 items, and he says, this will prove and say that you are in covenant with me. So when you say you walk down the aisle and you gave your life to the Lord, and he is the Lord of my life, and I just love him, and I just love him, and then you say, but, and I remember that. I remember that day when it occurred, and I will never forget when I gave my life to the Lord. My life has increased since then, and my walk with him, my prayer life has increased with him, and all of that is going on. And then you say, well, where is your sign? Oh, I don't have to have a sign. But that's a ring. And that's a really, really important part of the break, because the sign is what tells people that you belong to him. If I take my ring off, nobody else knows that I belong to somebody. Because a person can walk right up to you and get ready to speak to you and look at your finger and say, oh, they already taken. But if you don't have that sign on, what might happen? Hey, baby, how you? You don't have your sign. Oh, well, you didn't have a ring on, so I didn't know. Excuse me, pardon me, ma'am. Where's your sign? But you say that you are in covenant relationship with the Most High. But you're missing the sign. So now how in our life, in our regular everyday life, as we live, as we walk, as we deal in relationships with people, as we go to work and we establish relationships with people on our jobs, all of this have elements of covenant. But some of those elements are missing. So you know what I do when the elements are missing? I'm not in covenant with you. Yeah, well, I don't remember you like that. And there haven't been no increase, so we're not in covenant. Sometimes we take things into a perspective as a covenant, and it doesn't have any of the elements of a covenant. You know, as I was looking through the scripture, I was trying to find where Father Yahweh has to, or where love has any particular law. Y'all know what I mean? I was thinking about this. And I know you don't, because I was confused when I said it to myself. That love, if I love someone, what law is there against me loving someone? Now, the only time where Father has a law against someone loving someone, when it ain't the person, it ain't right, it ain't lawful. 2 men? No. 2 women? No. A man and a beast? No. A woman and a beast? No. A daddy and his daughter? No. Those things, particular, he speaks concerning those things. But when you go to a single person goes to their pastor and says, you know, what is the thing, you know, what about, you know, falling in love? What about intimacy? What about, the only laws against those things is between people that it's unlawful to have those things with. Those are the only laws, period. But never does Father Yahweh ever say, he says, I love those who love me, Yeshua said, will keep my commandments. Just that one little phrase. Now he doesn't say those who love me, oh, they will on a Shabbat, they will light a candle, and they'll wave 5 times in front of their face, and they'll wear head coverings over their head, and they'll say, oh, Baruch haba, Hashem, you know, he doesn't say any of that. All he says is, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So he doesn't even tell us how to love him, because he wants us to love him the way that love is supposed to go. When you love someone, no matter what the situation is, it's just like that covenant marriage. You don't care how whatever they get. You don't care. And some people have gotten married, and the love of their life became, I knew a lady where they got married, and 2 years later, he was diagnosed with cancer, and she went looking at this strong, burly, strapping husband of a man go down to like 110 pounds. Caring for him, cleaning him, bathing him, doing what she could for love. There's no law that's written. Father Yahweh didn't want to tell us, now, I want you to bow down 3 times before me. This is how you're going to prove your love to me. Bow down 3 times before me every day. I want you to stand on your right foot for 4 hours, and then I want you to go out and raise your hand up in the air for 6 hours every day. And that's going to prove that you love. He didn't say any of that. He said, those who love me will guard my commands. Period. Now, I want you to figure out how to guard them and keep them. How to present them to me in love. I want you to be creative in how you're going to love, how you loving me. Be creative. I'm going to do this. Be creative in how you teach your children. Your children turn out, they begin to love Yahweh with all their heart. But we don't take time. You don't have to do that. Because it's Yahweh, and he knows my heart. So I can present to him whatever kind of thing or whatever I want to present to him, right? Because he's Yahweh, and he'll accept anything. That's where we get messed up. Because we don't want love like that. And if our husbands or our wives loved us in that way, most of us would say, my wife don't love me. My husband don't love me. If they never asked you what you like, and they just give you something. If you're constantly telling them, this is what I like, oh, I really like that, and they never pay attention, you don't care about anything, you don't hear none of that, what would you say? This person don't care not one bit about, don't know me worth a hill of beans. Why in the world? Covenant. Because it has to be established. Something has to be established that we are in this relationship. And if it's not established, and well established, you know what, where people can see it, what happens? They know my heart. Yeah, my husband knows my heart. My wife knows my heart. But what's been established? The sign. He don't never wear his wedding ring. She don't. Why you go to work every day and don't ever wear your wedding ring? That's the sign. If you never remember anything. Father Yahweh calls us to guard and remember his covenant. But you never remember anything. I don't remember what you said from one day to the next. But I love you, we in covenant. You're probably not in covenant. There's no increase. Nothing special. That's why people break up. These 4 things. There's nothing to stay together for. There's nothing to fight for. Because there's nothing established. If any one of these 4 things is missing from your covenant relationship with Father Yahweh, I'm here to tell you, you are not in relationship with him. Because that he is established. And if he has established it between you and him, then there has to be that sign. You have to remember it. And there has to be increase that comes from it. So that's it. That's what Father Yahweh is saying. People need to understand and know. There's people walking around thinking they're in covenant with me and they're not. I don't know them. What did Yeshua say? He was going to say to those who come to him. In that day, what did he say? He said, you're going to come to me and say, oh, I cast out demons in your name. Oh, I did many great works. I healed the sick in your name. Oh, I called down for the demons to leave out, and demons left out of people, and I called them out in your name. And Yeshua listens to all they have to say, and then he says, depart from me, you worker of lawlessness. I never knew you. Why? Because they weren't in covenant with him. If you are missing any one of those 4 things, you're not in covenant with him. So he wants to know that he's established a covenant. He wants to establish a covenant with you. But it has to be on his terms. And it has to have all of the elements of a covenant. It can't just be you decided to walk this way, or you decided to just be this way, and that's it. That's not a covenant. You're in covenant with yourself, but you're not in covenant with the Most High. So, praise Father Yahweh. That's it. And he's taking
There is a place that I love to dwell.